my friends, hello and welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. So we're going to do a little bit of reading practice today. We're going to go over a reading test that's actually about inflation. So is it reading or is it social studies? Let's dive right in and take a look. So huge thanks to HiSET for giving me permission to use their reading test in this video. But if you're working on your GED, no worries, this is still going to help you. So if you've been with me for a while, you know that I like to follow the SLAY technique. So the S stands for skim, the L stands for look at the questions, A is actually read, A, answer the questions, and then yo, check your answers. We'll be following this SLAY technique in this video, but I recommend that you also do this as you're practicing other reading tests, science, and social studies, because both of those are actually reading tests as well. And just as a gift for you, I have this poster for you. And I actually have 4 versions of the poster, so you can choose whichever one is your favorite. Or heck, print them all so that you are reminded when you are doing a reading test, you want to follow this technique. So click the link down below and I will give you your free SLAY poster. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is skim. So I like to start with this right here. The following essay, written in 2023, is about trends in global inflation in the early 2020s, and it presents a discussion of whether inflation is temporary or long-lasting. Is inflation here to stay? So now I'm going to read the first little bit of each paragraph, maybe the first half a line. It is hardly surprising that inflation is a hot topic today. Now down to here. For nearly a century, from 1970 through 2020, demographic changes, 3 better policy frameworks. In the 2020s, global inflation has been triggered by COVID-19. Is the current inflation temporary or permanent? Some economists opine that the high global inflation is transitory. To conclude, global inflation may go up or down. So now I have a general idea of what this is about. It's talking about general inflation, the specific inflation of COVID-19 or 2020, and then also, is our current inflation transitory? Is it going to go away or is it permanent? So I have a general idea of what it's about, so now when I read, I'm going to be able to pay more attention. But now we have L look at the questions. Which of the following has contributed to the surge in inflation since 2021? This one refers to the paragraphs, so I'm not even going to take the moment to read it. Which of these countries' economies is least likely to suffer? This again refers to the line, so we'll skip that. And again, the line. So now we have our first A, which is actually read. It is hardly surprising that inflation is a hot topic today. It is pretty much everywhere. Inflation is defined by the rate of a surge in prices of daily use items and services over a long period. People experience it while paying bills or buying groceries. A little inflation is healthy for an economy. Friends, keep that in mind because there was a question about that, so a little inflation is good. It increases demand and spurs economic activity. However, hyperinflation creates uncertainty. It erodes purchasing power and destabilizes the economy. War, pandemics, monetary policies, and demand fluctuations trigger hyperinflation. Let us explore the trends in global inflation to see if inflation is here to stay. For nearly half a century, from 1970 to 2020, the world experienced an average decline in global inflation. This decline can be ascribed mainly to these 3 factors. 1. Technological advancements. Companies are using technology to increase production and reduce costs. 2. Demographic changes. Increasing population and age composition affect inflation. Population growth increases demand, and excessive demand creates inflation. Based on a study by Julius and Tackett, an increase in the dependent population the children and the elderly, is associated with higher inflation. Likewise, an increase in the share of the working age population is linked to weaker inflation. 3. Better policy frameworks. Central banks check inflation through monetary policy. It involves changing interest rates and controlling the money supply. In the 2020s, global inflation has been triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. These incidents disrupted supplies. The price of commodities rose, and these factors caused a surge in inflation. As per the World Economic Outlook update produced by the International Monetary Fund in July 2023, the global inflation rate rose to 8.7% in 2022. This was the highest level since 1996. Is the current inflation temporary or permanent? We can look at some forecasts from reliable sources. According to research affiliates, an inflation rate of 4% is often temporary, but when it rises to 6 to 8%, it may last about 10 years. As per the economic update presented in the IMF report, global inflation may drop from 8.7% in 2022 to 6.8% in 2023, 5.2% in 2024. Similarly, central banks say that they will meet their goals of bringing down inflation. Still, inflation will depend on how the three previously mentioned factors unfold in the future. Some economists opine that the high global inflation is transitory. They reason that this will be over once the pandemic and/or war-related disruptions are resolved. Others contend that inflation will last for a decade. They argue that inflation may rise again because of the various risk factors. Some companies may restrict trade to protect their industries and jobs. The wars and trade disputes and other geopolitical tensions may continue to disrupt supplies and rise inflation. To conclude, global inflation may go up or down depending on how different factors interact and evolve in the future. To keep a healthy global inflation rate, policymakers need to monitor inflation. They also need to adjust their policies to stabilize prices and support growth. Additionally, they must cooperate to address the challenges that could affect global inflation. And now we're on to the second A, which is to answer the questions. Which of the following has contributed to the surge in inflation since 2021? Was it increased production? No, it said this right in the article. Better monetary policies? No, it talked about monetary policies, but not as a result of the surge of the inflation in 2001. Increased youth population? No. Pandemic and war-related issues? Absolutely. So the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war is what has spurred our 2021 inflation. In paragraph 2, lines 7 through 17, how does the author develop and refine the idea that inflation is influenced by various factors? So let's go back and check it out. Okay, so this is our paragraph 2. And so it goes through the three factors, right? So we have technological advancements, demographic changes, and better policy frameworks. In this paragraph, is it comparing the effects of inflation and hyperinflation? No, it wasn't, right? By citing opinions from central banks and policymakers? No, that happened later, right? By providing definitions and examples of different factors? Yes, that is it, but let's look at D. By assessing various factors using some figures and forecasts? No. So C with those examples that it provided. Number 8. Which of these countries' economies is the least likely to suffer? Okay, remember how I paused the reading and I pointed out what it said, that some inflation is important, right? It keeps the economy going. So Do we want a country with zero inflation? Can you imagine if things were the same price as they were in the 1930s or in the 1950s? You go to the store and you buy a bottle of a soda, maybe Coca-Cola, and it's like 10 cents. Can you imagine that? So we need a little bit of inflation is good, right? So that's not going to be like it. Is a warlike country going to suffer? Yes. So that's not it. A country with inflation above 8%, they're definitely going to suffer. That's going to be hard on the country. A country with inflation between 2 to 3%, yes. That's what we want. We want 2 to 3% every year to really push that economy, keep things going. Question number 9. What is the purpose of paragraph 4, lines 22 through 27 in this passage? So here we have paragraph 4 down here. So is the current inflation temporary or permanent? So it looks like we're looking at research affiliates. 4% is temporary, 6 to 8% is long-term. Here it's predicting what the inflation is going to be. Central banks say their goals of bringing down inflation. So let's take a look at the question. To prove that inflation may drop or last longer depending upon different factors. That's what it did, right? It talked about, well, maybe it will last, maybe it won't. Here are our predictions. Here's how it will last longer. Here's how it won't last longer, right? So let's look at B. To provide evidence for the claim that inflation is permanent. No, it gave us those options, right? C. To provide some suggestion for policymakers to deal with inflation. No, it didn't talk about that. To provide evidence for the claim that inflation is temporary. No. So it really did that comparison. So A here is our answer. 10. What is the main topic of discussion in paragraph 5? So here we have paragraph 5 right here. So some economists opine that high global inflation is transitory. And once the pandemic or war-related disruptions are resolved, but some say it may last a decade, companies may restrict their trade, war and trade disputes and other geological tensions may continue to disrupt supplies and raise inflation. So what did that do? Did it give the reasons behind the low inflation before 2020? No. The effects of inflation on people and the economy? No. Right? Did it talk about how you've been affected? Like, I go to the store and eggs are so much more expensive? No. The factors that triggered global inflation? No, it didn't say what the triggers were, right? It talked about the arguments behind the idea that inflation is either transitory or long-lasting. That was it. And we made it to the end. Great job, my friends. Thanks for sticking with me. Believe in yourself just like I believe in you. And if you haven't already downloaded our free posters, definitely do. The link right down below, and it's completely free. Okay, I will see you in our next video. Make sure that you believe in yourself just like I believe in you. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.